It's really important to have a voice so that you can be confident in who you are and what value you're bringing to the table. The stronger my voice became, the more people trusted me and also gave me a lot of strength to navigate complex situations and to solve really hard problems.
Welcome to Real Creative Leadership, a place where creative leaders can find insights and practical guidance on the day-to-day job of being a creative leader. We focus on real issues, topics, and insights of creativity in the business world. Join me as we explore the best strategies for developing your team, getting others to embrace your vision, and generating amazing experiences. This series is produced by the Stoke Group, and I'm your host, Adam Morgan, Adobe Executive Creative Director and author of Sorry Spock, Emotions Drive Business. And this is Real Creative Leadership. Hello and welcome. Welcome back to Real Creative Leadership. I'm your host, Adam Morgan, and we are excited to dig into this exciting new topic of how to find your voice and vision. So today, our special guest is a wonderful human being, and I just had so many great conversations with her leading up to this. So I'm so excited for you all to hear her story. So I'd like to introduce to you the head of brand design at Grammarly, Liz O. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited. This we're getting here near the end of season 3, which is it's so interesting. I'd heard of some podcasts, it's like most podcasts, like 90% only get past episode 3 when they create them, which makes sense because I've been a part of a few that have only gone to 3. So the fact that we're 60 something in, it's pretty awesome. So I'm excited to have you as part of this journey with us. Before we get into our topic of finding your voice, first, just give us a little bit of an introduction of you, your background, and how you relate to creativity in this industry, and then we'll get digging into the topic.
Yeah, of course. Well, I started in creativity, I would say it was identified when I was probably more in high school. And then eventually I went to Rhode Island School of Design, where I really found myself and really found my community. And once I graduated, I started to work in New York City, where I was able to, it was the early 2000s. There weren't a lot of opportunities for young designers, but I got good internships. I explored different opportunities in any industry that would really take me at the time and learned a lot from a lot of colleagues and peers and senior people that I had the pleasure of working with. And then I really found myself in New York working at a small studio called PS New York. And that's where I really learned a lot. The work was really centered around arts, cultural spaces, and nonprofits. And I think that really aligned with a lot of the things that I wanted to be doing more of. After working there for quite some time, I wanted to explore working with different disciplines, with different companies, and went into the agency world. And that's where I joined mid to large size agencies, where I got to work with big clients like IBM, Bloomberg, to name a couple, and really helped shape, whether it be products to brand refreshes. Really got to work with a lot of different clients across the board. And then I moved to LA in 2016 and really tried to explore what it was like out here. I had never left New York City, so I'd been there for 13 plus years, and really tried to explore what the opportunities were here. Found myself at Red Interactive Agency, working with entertainment clients, and then at Compass, where I led the design team, and I was there for 4.5 years. And that was really exciting. I really got to build a design team, help build a design team. And then I joined Grammarly in November of last year. And I joined because I have been a longtime user of Grammarly. And I was really excited because I didn't really know that much about the design team at the time. And once I got to know the design team, it just seemed like a perfect fit for me.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing your
No.
experience and lived experience there with your career. But I actually find it fun that you're the head design at Grammarly, a product or a technology that helps us with speaking and
Yes.
voice. And we're going to be talking about the interesting topic today is how do you find your voice and how do you understand your voice and how do you use your voice? I think a little bit of setup for the users is that we've been talking a little bit about how during this pandemic, so many things have changed. We've had, it used to be it was all, in person. And so the extroverts ruled the land. And then we moved to this kind of hybrid or actually like remote world. And it was like all the extroverts were hating it like me and all the introverts are loving it, because it's all just, from your own space. And now it's going to be hybrid. So it's like, it's a really good time to understand the balance between those two different personalities and how you can figure out to find your path, amid all the chaos of the different voices out there. So let's start with that. Early on, when we talked earlier, you mentioned that in the first 10 years of your career, you felt like you didn't have a voice. Can you explain a little
Yeah.
bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was always taught growing up that as long as we were heads down and worked really hard, that we would succeed. And coming from a family of hard workers, perfectionists, who really did that and pursued the American dream, coming from South Korea. I think that was really ingrained in me. And that is exactly what I did once I started working in New York City. I was really heads down. I really thought doing the work, staying up till midnight, overachieving or exceeding expectations was really all I needed to do to really be recognized and succeed. I quickly found, though, that, by being silent, by being the one doing the work, not being recognized for the work, letting other people take recognition for the work that I was doing, was really starting to be a disservice, not only to myself, but it would start to be a disservice to everyone I worked with, and then ultimately the client too, whenever it was for client work, because it was, because if the ideas and the work were being generated by me at the time, even though I was very junior and I was still learning, not having my idea fully recognized or fully heard throughout,
Mm-hmm.
really led to an outcome that wasn't ideal for anybody. And it wasn't fully solving the problem. And I think that for me, I just started to see like gaps in that, right? Like when I had someone, it's kind of like the game of telephone, right? Like things get lost because you're not speaking up, someone's speaking up for you. And then it's like not quite the idea that you have, but you're kind of running with it. And that's what ultimately started to happen. And I started to recognize that. I also started to see that it was true that the people that were speaking up were getting recognized for the work and they were being heard and they were being respected in the room. And I think that for me, that was really hard to do because I didn't like to speak up. I got very nervous. My voice would shake a lot. And I just thought that, I really wanted the idea or my articulation of the idea to be perfect before I actually said something. And by then it was already too late.
Yeah.
So for me, it was very much like, okay, let's just keep staying heads down, doing the work, and making sure that I could do the best that I can, and hope that someone will recognize me. And I think that I started to realize probably maybe my fifth year into working that probably is not the best way to progress in your career. And I started to work on myself and try to figure out ways to present ideas, to articulate ideas in a way that other people would understand how other people spoke. So really practicing active listening, and seeing how other people communicated overall. And I think that was really inspiring to me. And so I did tons of things. I used to walk around in my small apartment in New York City, saying things out loud, practicing how I said things in meetings, and making sure again that felt really that I could speak very confidently about what I was saying, and that would then be heard. My voice was also very strangely, because on a personal level, it's never this way. I'm always told that that my voice really does extend. Um, but in the professional setting, my voice, quite literally, was very quiet. It was
Mm.
very hard for me to not just speak up, but even just talk. My volume was so low that it was just hard to even get to um, past a whisper, and I think
Yeah.
that in and of itself was something that I really, really did have to work on, because again, I think I recognized that, okay, it didn't matter how great my work was, things were getting lost. And ultimately, I was not growing because I was just in that safe space of being my introverted self, being
Mm.
quite mute, and being quite quiet in a lot of these situations.
I'd love to back up just a little bit because
Yeah.
there was a turning point for you. It's not just like over time that you
Yes.
realize, I need to be better at this. And I think a lot of us internally have those kind of wrestling with
Hmm.
ourselves. But what was the actual turning point? Like you told me of a specific moment when a friend made a comment. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear that story.
Yes, it was. I do specifically remember this. It was when it seemed like there had been a pattern in my career, where the positions that I was in and the circumstances that I was in and the teams that I was on, it seemed like the outcome was very similar. And sort of my critique back to why it wasn't a good fit for me was pretty similar too. And then ultimately, it was a question of like, okay, these are different environments, totally different people, different companies, different clients, everything's different. The common denominator here is me. So what can I do to figure out, and be really, really reflective on what I can do to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to be honest with myself, and really improve. And then I think after about 3 to 4 times in that circumstance, it was really clear to me that I really needed to figure out a way to find my voice, and not in a way that, again, mimicked other successful voices necessarily, but find my personal voice to be able to be seen and heard, and to be understood as a creative. Yeah.
And I loved it. Like you mentioned, you would walk around and practice and try and find your voice, but you went even further than that. Like tell everyone something about a coach and some other things like there.
Yeah.
There was a very deliberate journey that you went through to figure out your
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah, I first it was like, okay, is it just presentations? What is it? It was like really diagnosing. Like I had a plan, and I had a
Mm.
plan because I really wanted to become a creative leader, and I knew that in order to do so, I needed to work on specific areas. I needed to figure out how to say the things that I needed to say, and I really need to understand like how to think strategically, for example. So I worked with different coaches. I worked on public speaking, really being able to, again, hear myself, and not cringe every time, but be okay with that, hearing myself. And then I really worked on everything from written to verbal communication, and really figuring out what kind of style I really wanted to embrace. And that meant practicing everywhere I could. That's one thing. That meant practicing in the car on my way to a commuting. That meant in the shower. That meant everywhere that I could possibly practice. That meant trying different things, like whether it be cue cards, whether it be notes, whether it be practicing memorizing, whatever it would be. I really ran the gamut of trying to find ways and tools that could help me. And that also meant bringing my partner into the conversation, and saying things or presenting things and pitching ideas, and then having critiques that way as well. So I think for me, I really tried to start in areas that I felt most safe, and then it started to branch out in ways that made me feel very uncomfortable. And I think the discomfort definitely did change me and helped every single time. I still do struggle every day, all the time, but I think that it has helped me build that confidence.
Yeah, two thoughts on that. Like, first of all, I find it fascinating that when you were going through, it's not just the practicing and the public speaking, but he also mentioned, learning more strategic thought and ideas, because I think
Mhm.
a big part of finding your voice is not just the expression of your voice, but also what do you stand for? What do
Yeah.
you believe in? What do you care about?
Yeah.
What are the things that
Yeah.
you're passionate about? And that's got to come through with your voice as well.
Yeah, it does. And I think the thing that was really good for me was, and I think I mentioned this to you last time as well, was that I really kept a journal of things that
Mm.
resonated with me as a young designer. So I kept it in sort of those quiet, darker moments where I was, staying up really late at night working on things. And I remember keeping a journal of things that were hard and challenging for me, and things that were, experiences that were beacons of light for me. Like, for example, a senior designer pulling me aside and giving me advice on something that was totally unsolicited. So things like that really did help me, that really started to shape my perspective on like what really does work and wanting to be more like that in my own way. And I think that really did start to help me understand, right? Like when I see a creative director going to a meeting, and when I was a designer, and really start to present ideas that are full on creative strategy that really encompass every aspect of the business goals or the outcomes or solving the problem. I think that really started to inspire me to figure out, okay, what is that for me, and what do I need to do to learn how to really uh, holistically approach it that way myself.
That is an amazing story. Like not many of us kept a journal of all of the lessons learned, and I would say like not just the good things, but also the bad things that you've learned and how to adapt. Maybe tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about that, of like the good and the bad, and how that affects you today when you go back and check your journal for what you thought back then.
Yeah, I think the thing that I recognized is that I think I recognized this very early on in my career. When you become very senior, it's very hard. You forget, right? Like you
Mhm.
do. It's hard to remember what it felt like to be a junior designer or an intern. And I think having gone through some hard experiences in New York, I think I really didn't want to forget. If I had the privilege, and this is a big if, at the time there was no sort of guarantee that I would become a creative leader. I think for me it was very much like, if I ever make it there, I want to remember what this felt like as a young designer who didn't know much, who was scared and really anxious. And so I think for me that was really helpful, because there were things that did a lot of harm, right? And there were interactions, there were experiences that set me back and brought me down in a way that didn't help me become who I am today. But those were all lessons that I learned to overcome and to remember not to do. If I became a creative leader, not to mimic or not to do, and to make sure that I don't behave that way. I think that's really an important thing, and that's something that I reference quite often, because sometimes there will be something happening, and I think in order to build empathy, I do reference it, because I really do want to make sure that I'm understanding it from a place of true understanding and true empathy to that person, and to younger or more junior creatives.
Well, I'm sure like that gives you like empathy superpower, like because you have like this special little notepad that you can go back and reference and be like, how did I feel? The rest of us just try and remember, oh yeah, I knew what it was like to be a junior. This is what I cared about, but we're just
Yeah.
going off of old memories. You have like a written record of it, which is pretty
Yeah.
powerful.
Oh, one of the things that I come back to time and time again is actually recognition. Because the times that I did get recognition, obviously it didn't come from advocating for myself. But when I did, it was just quite incredible how much impact that had on me as a young designer. Anytime I got even a shred of recognition, and I think that has carried through for sure, because I do think that for creatives that I can relate to, or even not relate to, but I can see as a bit less experienced than I am, not getting the recognition, I see how that impacts their performance. And I think that's something that I've really tried to stay true to as a learning from that record, from being able to remember what it felt like to not be recognized and to be quite invisible in the process.
Well, that's so fascinating because I think most of the time as leaders, we're like, oh, yeah, I recognize that person, but it could have been
Mm-hmm.
a year and a half ago. But in your mind, you're like, oh, yeah, yeah, I took care of that check. But I think that's really
Exactly.
good for you to recognize that we need to, that it does make a bigger difference than we think in early careers of how we
For
address
sure.
people. Oh, that's interesting. Well, maybe let me ask this question. So obviously, since you have empathy superpower, and that's a huge part of leadership, and maybe some of us can learn from that. But um, some might say, yeah, right. Like in our industry, it's like the days of the iron fist are gone. Sure, like
Mhm.
not everyone's as mean as it was. Like for me in the mid '90s, everyone was just ruthless, and maybe there's the question of like, are we too soft in business? Are we too empathetic? Does this empathy and softness really help business, or does it make a difference? What are your thoughts?
I don't think that we're too soft. I think that we are still somewhat misunderstood in business. And I don't think we have yet um, established ourselves within businesses to have everyone understand. And I think that once we do, I do think that there will be, it's not about even softness or even empathy. I think we will just see better work because there will be just much more energy and passion around it. I think that a lot of creatives in the tech world, in any kind of business setting, probably don't feel as understood within the business on how they actually make a business like impact on the business and how they could positively affect business. And I think that uh, most likely it's coming from the structure. It's very
Mm-hmm.
structural. And so I do think that if the structure can evolve to be inclusive of design, I think that, and designers and writers and creatives overall, I think that we will see that the rigor that people miss from those old days will come pretty naturally. Because I think as creative problem solvers, we are very much wired, many of us, not all of us, but many of us are wired to want to go solve it, right? Have ideas wherever we go, or, we don't really shut off because I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's just how a lot of creative brains are sort of wired. But I think that the difference is that is the structure, is are we set up to really have an impact on the business or not? And I do think that as creative leaders, it is our responsibility to make sure that there is that space and that structure does evolve to include design, which is not easy. And there are going to be some companies that will not be open to that. And I think that is, then that's the question that I have for that business or those companies, because I do think that design plays a huge role in overall, shaping of experiences that really do lead to positive business outcomes.
Oh, 100%. In fact, as
Yeah.
you bring it up, that's a big part of what real creative leadership is all about, is that, our creative voice is often overshadowed by everyone speaking
Hmm.
business or marketing or finance or
Hmm.
operations or whatever it may be. And in leadership of companies right now, those are strong voices.
Hmm.
So here's the question: how have you created space for creative voices to show up more and how and show how creativity can help more in business? What are some of the tactics you've taken?
Yeah. I think a lot of the ways to do that is finding ways to build trust with those leaders across the board. I think that is the first step that a lot of uh, leaders need to take, is really assessing the situation at a company, especially since I'm relatively new still at Grammarly. Again, I think I lean into active listening. I really do try to understand and see and analyze how other people interact, to really understand how I can build trust, because I don't want to come in to a new company, especially coming out really strong. I do want to learn a lot first, learn the lay of the land, learn how to work with leaders, and learn what they are really receptive to versus, coming in with my sort of point of view too strong. That said, I think once you have been at a company and you do build those relationships, you do build that trust. I do think having a strong POV is really important. And I think really being consistent on that and not backing down from that is something that I've seen time and time again as um, something that really works, because
Mm.
it is clear to me that creative teams in these settings are oftentimes the anomaly, right? Like everyone else is speaking the same language and you're the ones that are not. So I think it's like being that bridge, educating, being consistent, and then holding the line, I think is really important. Also, because there is that need to bridge the gap, I do think that in that process, it is really, really important that people understand why. I
Mm.
think once you explain and educate and share with cross functional leaders who are not creative or not designers or not writers, I think that once you share reasons why things have to be a certain way or that you're proposing something new, once they understand why, I find that most people are really a lot more open minded to change than you would think.
You know, being a creative leader is so different than just sitting back and waiting. Like you have to make change. You have to make
Yeah.
opportunity. You have to speak marketing. You have to speak finance. You have to
Yes.
understand the why of the business so that you can say, and here's why creative is going to help improve that. Here's how we're going
Right.
to take steps to get there. So I'd love to
Exactly.
switch to this. So perhaps there are some listening to this right now thinking, oh, maybe I don't have a voice. Maybe, I'm not vocal enough. And it's not just like, again, we established having a voice isn't just being loudmouth.
Hmm.
But I would love to hear from your experience of like, why should they share their voice more often? What's the why for them rather than just the why for the business?
It's really important to have a voice so that you can be confident in who you are and what value you're bringing to the table. I think that over time, it's really clear to me that the stronger my voice became, the more people trusted me.
Yeah.
And that trust came with a lot of responsibility, but that responsibility also gave me a lot of strength to navigate complex situations and to solve really hard problems. And I think that as a creative, you want that strength. I think that you want to be able to build that up. And just like anything else in life, I think that um, you having that voice is going to just strengthen so many aspects of your life, not just in work. And I think that that is something that I take with me, and I don't take that for granted. I think that again, that did not happen easily in any way, shape, or
Right.
form, but I do think that it has helped me. It was also really clear to me that there were a lot of people that didn't look like me or sound like me, and I think
Yeah.
that was really discouraging to me as a young designer. Um, and it didn't feel like I had a place because of that. So early on, it's like I self discouraged, right? Because I was like, it
Okay.
doesn't exist. So it's probably not for me. And I do really want to encourage people to not do that because I heard something recently, which is you can't be what you don't see. And so I think it's one of those things where you can be that person for yourself. And I feel that it's really, really important that you take those risks on yourself and start to shape your voice. I can't say enough how important it was to have teams, to have designers, to have colleagues, to have partners, have friends who were also just really encouraging to you. So I hope that everyone has that. And I feel that that was an important aspect to who I am today.
Well, just listening, and I hope this doesn't come off as too catchphrasy, but it sounds like a short summary of that is build your voice and you're building your career.
Yeah.
And then where you took it was and your life. So if
Yes.
you want to build a better life, it starts by building a stronger
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks I'm just like this extroverted, loudmouth, whatever, and what they don't realize is not everyone. It took me time to figure that out too. Like
Mhm.
in high school was the kid in ninth grade. I remember I called him a wall comber. Myself was a wall comber where I just like scoot along the edge of the wall and get from one class to the next, and ne'er
Yeah.
shall I talk with anyone. And even with like, I go out and speak in front of huge groups. it took a lot for me to train my brain, even, as I become more and more extroverted, I had to like think about like, this is fun. This is excitement. This isn't scary. This
Yeah.
isn't about fear or worries, but it's all the positive stuff that I had to like keep telling myself, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's awesome. This is what I want. And then now it is that, like, I don't worry about talking in front of people, and I can hold, a conversation, and I know what I need to talk about. So all this is so much great advice for all of us. So if anyone's out there listening, please go out there. Liz is such a great example of being so purposeful about it. A lot of us just kind of, same with creativity. It's more of like a Zen experience where you just kind of figure it out. But I think having some purpose around this, and really as we're looking toward the end of this year and looking for next year and, goals, this is a good one. Like, how can I work on my voice and what I believe in and how I express it and how I show up? And I think that is just something all of us can benefit from.
I think you said it all. I think that one of the things that I would just add to that is that I really do believe that creatives can change everything. I think that we have a lot of great. I've seen so many incredible designers and writers and producers and just so many people who are pouring their heart and soul into so much incredible work. And I do think that um, I'm constantly in awe and inspired by people around me and by especially the younger generations. And I think that I'm just really excited to still be a part of this industry and to be able to work alongside everyone and to keep learning. I think that I think the reason why I love this work in general is because I think that there's nothing that we can't solve, and I'm really excited.
Now, just hearing you say that really not quite choked me up, but I felt the power of that. I've always felt that creative ideas can change everything, but it's also true that
Mm-hmm.
creative people can change everything. And when I say creative people, I believe everyone can be creative. It's not just designers
Yeah.
and writers, but they just happen to spend a lot more time focused on that. But
Yeah.
absolutely, the more we tap into our natural human creativity, the more we are going to improve the world and change things and improve our lives. So that's awesome. That's a great story. Well, Liz, thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful insight and how you found your voice. And I really hope that our listeners out there can find a path forward to get their voice figured out and also heard more. But if someone wants to follow up on with you and follow your career, where would they find you? Tell us your URLs.
Yeah. The best way to find me is through LinkedIn. So please do follow me, connect. You could also see some of my work, not my most recent work, at lizo.design. That's Liz, Lizoh.design. And we are working at Grammarly very hard on all of the work for 2023. And so we will be more external facing. And so URLs like grammarly.design will be live in 2023.
Well, and as always, you can find us at realcreativeleadership.com, where you can, see past shows, episodes, look at show notes, any of the detail you want on any of the shows. And we encourage you to join the conversation, build your voice, maybe by, making some comments on our YouTube channel or wherever else you listen to Real Creative Leadership. So we would love to hear any of your feedback. Me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, and at adamwmorgan.com if you want to learn more about my books or articles or other things that I'm working on. And then, as always, we appreciate the Stoke Group who helps produce this show. So you can find them at thestokegroup.com if you need help with strategic or creative insights or help on any of the projects you're working on. They're a great partner. So thanks again for listening. Good luck, everyone, searching and finding your voice. And we hope to hear more from all of you out there in the industry. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Real Creative Leadership. I'm your host, Adam Morgan. This series is produced by the Stoke Group, a full-service digital marketing agency that specializes in content marketing, video, and interactive experiences. If you're looking for a partner to build a strategy and content that delivers, visit thestokegroup.com and connect today.